In 2012, a team of leaders and influencers from the 92nd Street Y founded Giving Tuesday, a national day of giving the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Last year, more than $160 million was raised from more than 98 countries, and this year we expect to be even bigger. We base this based on the data from more than thousands and thousands of nonprofits that use the fundraising platform on DonorPerfect, combined with what we expect to see from other companies like PayPal, Facebook, or Blackbaud. Based on this, we expect to see more than 23% growth, or more than $200 million for 2017 on Giving Tuesday. Let's dive deeper into Giving Tuesday. Hi, we're in front of the 92nd Street Y. I'm here today to talk with Henry Timms, Executive Director, and Asha Curran, Chief Innovation Officer, about Giving Tuesday. Come on in, let's go.
I remember at the beginning of Giving Tuesday, DonorPerfect in your community really got behind this idea in the very first year. So it's 5 years on, it's great to have you back.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. So really, for our users in the audience out there, how did Giving Tuesday start? Help me understand.
So look, we're here at the 92nd Street Y, we're a community centre, and the thing we were thinking about was how do you build communities in new ways? How do you think about what a community centre does? And we knew about Black Friday and we knew about Cyber Monday, which were both these kind of massive surges of interest around retail. And so the thought was, after Black Friday and Cyber Monday, what about Giving Tuesday? How could you create a day that, instead of a day where the direction was really about buying things and about consumption, it was actually about philanthropy and about compassion. So that was the framing idea. And we began it here as an experiment through what has become our innovation centre. And obviously it got some traction.
So I think Giving Tuesday was a really big question in the beginning, right? Because we were basically saying, would this be an additive day of giving? Would we be able to welcome new donors into the giving world? Would it be people who are already very used to giving who would take up the idea? We really didn't know the answer to any of those things. But now we are lucky to have been doing some really interesting data work this year, as well as working with partners like you for all of these years who are really looking at those numbers year over year. And we're able to say pretty confidently that Giving Tuesday is indeed bringing new donors to the table, who tend to be stickier donors. They end up really liking to give, and so they give repeatedly, they give more, they give year over year, and they give more smartly. They start learning about how to be a more impactful donor. The other thing that's been really surprising with Giving Tuesday, which has really been a series of surprises, is that it has spread far beyond the United States at this point. So we actually just welcomed our 40th country, our 40th official leader to Giving Tuesday. It was Barbados, so it was a very, very tiny country, but we also welcomed India this year, and Norway, and dozens of others. So the idea of giving turns out to be very resonant, despite being in places where Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday don't exist.
People have played around with Giving Tuesday a lot. So Giving Tuesday became Giving Shoes Day, where people dress for success as women going back into the workforce, providing shoes and clothes for women getting back into the workforce. And they do a big clothing drive essentially on Giving Tuesday. So we like Giving Shoes Day a lot. We like Giving Blue Day. University of Michigan raised over $5 million through turning it into that. But then also you like some of the campaigns that don't get a lot of airtime, which I think are really important. There was a campaign in Baltimore last year called Threads, which was about people getting to know each other in Baltimore as a city over a whole year. So 1,000 people got to know each other, had supper together, began to kind of reach across some divides. And on Giving Tuesday, they all went out into the community to volunteer to help repair Baltimore in all sorts of interesting and powerful ways. So you really begin to see this idea that Giving Tuesday, which goes everything from kind of the typical kind of $100 donation that somebody makes on the day to something they care about. It's also kind of underpinned by these kind of moments of civic engagement all around the world now, and I think that's a very powerful thing to watch happen. And again, like we've been at the heart of that because it began here, but this is a story about a community making this their own. It's a story about a community of people grabbing Giving Tuesday, and every year now, the best stories of Giving Tuesday aren't the ones that we know about here at the 92nd Street Y. They're the ones that you hear about via Twitter, the ones you see emerging in the world, and that's, I think, the strength of the movement. You see the innovation in our sector, you see the capacity of organizations to try new things, to experiment, to work out new ways to connect with their communities, and most importantly, to work out new ways of making impact in the world. Like Giving Tuesday, we did a survey recently which showed that 75% of all participants see Giving Tuesday as something where they've tried something new, right? So this is really this kind of explosion of effort, of innovation in our sector. That's something we should celebrate more often.
The one thing I would say that I love to see with Giving Tuesday campaigns is collaboration that hasn't happened before. So I'll give you an example, but there are many, many examples like this. There was a group of nonprofits in Wisconsin that were all focused on women's health issues that, like many nonprofits that are mission aligned, were constantly in competition with each other. Nobody at those organizations ever spoke to each other. They saw themselves as competing for the same pool of donor dollars with the same kind of mindset that we're all very familiar with, right? So for Giving Tuesday a couple of years ago, they decided to collaborate for the first time to host a joint fundraiser at a space donated by a local bar. They held a sort of awareness raising for women's health issues all together, and then they evenly split all the proceeds. And that model was then picked up by other cities who started doing similar collaborations. So that's the kind of campaign that I love to see on Giving Tuesday, because I think it breaks new ground for an organization to be able to reach out beyond their four walls and to be able to put more priority toward the fact that we're all working toward the same causes, right? We're not actually in competition with each other.
Right. So 3 predictions. One, I think it's a safe one, which is more global. So the campaign is becoming much more global, and there are network effects at play now, right?
Good,
so if we have 40 countries where there are leaders leading the campaigns, that bolsters the movement. So I think you'll see more local. I think you'll see more global, sorry. I think you'll see more local. I think what's interesting about Giving Tuesday is the bigger it's got, the smaller it's got. And what I mean by that is these kind of very big campaigns, it's so localized now. There are lots of even kind of local city campaigns, or even block campaigns, or even kind of give where you live campaigns. So there's a really interesting, with the scale of the movement on social media, in practical terms, it's actually getting quite small in some ways, which is, I think, a really interesting development. And the third, I think, would be more human. So I think with Giving Tuesday, it's at a scale now where the people who are really coming out on top with Giving Tuesday are the people who are seeing it as much more than simply an opportunity to get more donations, but a way to engage more people fully in their causes. So the big shift, I think, with Giving Tuesday is replicated in philanthropy more generally, which is this shift of us thinking about people as donors and thinking them more about owners. How do we get people to own our causes? And I think what we'll see with Giving Tuesday is the people who are going to get ahead are those people who really put the cause and the fundraising in the hands of their communities. I want to thank and credit the DonorPerfect community, because the truth of it is this idea, we kind of hatched it here, but the reason it got to scale was because lots of people started to try something new. They got behind an idea that a lot of people said would never have been tried before, and no one would ever do it, and it wouldn't work, and no one would collaborate. And we heard all those stories, right? But the reason that now across the country, not everybody, but a lot of people now, after Black Friday and Cyber Monday, will pause to think about giving. The reason they'll do that is because communities like yours got behind an idea that no one thought would work. And so I think we've been really, I remember seeing the data over the years that you guys have created and seeing the stories that have come out of your community, and we're proud to be a partner with DonorPerfect, and we look forward to seeing what you guys come up with this year.
So there you have it. We expect more than $200 million on Giving Tuesday in 2017. I'd really like to thank Henry Timms and Asha Curran from the 92nd Street Y for their time today. If you want to find out more information on Giving Tuesday, just visit givingtuesday.org or donorperfect.com/givingtuesday.